Hello number ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking, and whenever we think of the Greeks, we think of a single, united, homogenous people, interconnected by culture, language and history, inhabiting the current state of Greece, or Ellada. And yet, one of the most archetypal notions of ancient Greece is that of the poleis, the independent city-states. This may appear as a paradox of sorts. Were the ancient Greeks a single unified people, or were they a collection of people marked by the perimeters of their city-states? A key factor we have to disclose earlier on in this analysis is that while being separate and independent, and lacking the concept of a single Greek nation in the modern sense, the ancient Greeks did consider themselves as one when faced by a common enemy. Yet, as we will see already in the archaic period, an emerging phenomenon of internal relationships appears to have been the true beginning of a synthesis of ethnic and cultural strata. But when did this concept of single Greek identity begin? What was there before? And how did this primal form of collective societal boundary come to be? Aristotle understood the poleis in two ways. One, as specific communities, say for instance Corinth, Athens, Sparta. Two, as a physical location, a city in its structural presence of a human settled community. The second usage in this dual definition is often ignored in modern discourse, while being absolutely present in the ancient texts. Moreover, understanding the spatial dynamics between the genesis of a people's identity and the way they view themselves and the world around them is paramount to unlocking the method of our concept of a people is born. Connect that with the mythic genealogies, and we have the building blocks of our comprehensive analysis. Efforts to define ethnicity frequently rely on the identification of specific criteria believed to constitute an ethnic group. In 1986, Anthony D. Smith proposed a framework comprising 6 such components: a collective designation, a shared historical memory, a distinct cultural repertoire, a sense of group solidarity, and connection to a defined territory, and a common myth of ancestral origin. Building upon this foundation, Jonathan M. Hall argued that territorial association, particularly when coupled with a mythologized genealogy, forms the core of ethnic identity. In contrast, Eric Gruen critiques the entire framework of ethnic criteria. Gruen contends that by refraining from hierarchizing these criteria, Smith sidesteps critical debates regarding which attributes are most essential, and whether these features reflect historical realities or merely serve the ideological aim of national discourse. Regardless of which position you take, it's essential to emphasize that the process of ethnogenesis is both somewhat natural and artificial. Members of an ethnic group do often possess some immutable characteristics, such as common phenotypic traits, some mutable characteristics, such as their core language, but do not always inherently possess fixed distinguishing traits at their genesis. Rather, these tend to gradually develop over time within highly cohesive communities. What this means is that there is a social component which interacts with the biological internal sphere of early tribal networks. At this stage of our analysis, we can say that ethnic identity is often fluid in its primordial genesis, finally crystallizing through a highly dynamic process with multiple variables. Classical Greece emerged from the period known as the Greek Dark Ages, or the Hellenic Middle Ages, which spanned from 1100 BC to 750 BC, following the collapse of the Mycenaean civilization. This pivotal historical event is often referred to as the fall of the Mycenaean palaces. As apparent by a careful analysis of available data-based structures, the decline of Mycenaean civilization occurred due to a variety of factors. An investigation of Linear B documents reveals that our current understanding of the societal collapse is riddled with questions and lacking in certainties. However, one thing is clear: the Dorians were not northern invaders or foreigners to Mycenaean society. Instead, they were one of the many ethnic groups comprising its social fabric, alongside the Achaeans, the Minians, the Peraebi, the Ionians, the Cretans, and the Lacedaemonians, all of whom are attested in Linear B text. What likely occurred was a vast domino effect that also affected the ancient Near East. Even though modern historiography has tried to eliminate the notion of destabilizing invasions by foreign people, such movements and effects likely did occur, as referenced in Egyptian records concerning the Sea People. However, early historiography exaggerated the impact of these invasions, which had more social repercussions than military or political ones. With the collapse of Mycenaean society, the Greek Dark Ages began, and the various ethnic groups that had already been part of Mycenaean Greeks contributed to the emergence of new realities, those of classical Greece. And of course, as one possible example, we have the Phocis. Phocis is one region of Greece that underwent a phenomenon of ethnogenesis. During the Mycenaean period, there seemed to have been no palatial centers there, and the local communities appear to have orbited around those in Boeotia. With the onset of the Greek Dark Ages, however, Phocian sanctuaries became important points of reference, even for Boeotian and Thessalian communities. And a distinctive trait of the Greek Dark Ages is precisely the shift of communal focus from palaces to sanctuaries. So let's focus our attention to these ancient people, the Phocians and the Thessalians. In the famous catalogue of ships in the Iliad, the Phocians are mentioned as an ethnos, but this term should be understood in reference specifically to the inhabitants of Anopius and its immediate surrounding. The term Phocians also appears in the Shield of Heracles, an archaic poem attributed to Hesiod, dated between the 8th and the 6th century BC. In classical text, Phocis is mentioned chiefly in relation to a series of military episodes known as the Sacred Wars, which progressively led to the establishment of a true Phocian koinon, or league, centered around the sanctuary of Delphi. This was an independent entity, a military alliance with sacral overtones. Traditionally, the narrative structure includes 4 sacred wars, although it's unclear whether the first ever truly occurred, or whether it was a literary construct. The second war began when Sparta extended its control over part of central Greece. These were attempts to dominate the Delphic sanctuary, a narrative possibly fabricated by the Athenians. In the Mycenaean era, Thessalian society revolved around the palace at Dimini, but during the Greek Dark Ages, Thessaly appears drawn to the sanctuaries of Phocis. This is supported by the discovery of Thessalian fibulae, or brooches, at the Phocian sanctuaries of Hiampolis and Abae, objects identical to those found at the major Thessalian site of Therae. And within this, a crucial point is the following. Within Thessaly's social fabric, we also find the perioikic populations, neighboring people who, once defeated in battle, were incorporated into Thessalian society as subordinates. Their strict class structure resembled that of Sparta, and proper Thessalians resided in the tetrads, or 4 regional divisions. However, Thessaly was a polis perpetually inclined towards expansion, and according to Plutarch, at some point, prior to the Persian Wars, the Thessalians managed to assert control over Phocis.